Hello everyone, welcome to my channel about writing stuff. My name is Camille and today we're doing actual writing advice video. It's been a while, but today I want to talk about character relationships, mainly because I'm in the point of the outlining, blueprinting process where I'm getting ready to start drafting. And I always know when I'm ready to start drafting because I'm imagining scenes between characters. Usually, cornerstone scenes between characters. So I want to talk about character relationships. So, like I said, once I start imagining character scenes and interactions, dialogue, that's really my motivation to start drafting. Because everything's come to life, everything's falling into place. Whereas the initial spark or inspiration for a story for me is usually just the singular character. So it's what if this type of person finds himself in this type of situation? And when I'm creating characters, I always go with that sort of mantra where it's, the type of person who wouldn't necessarily fit in this certain situation. It's the idea of Peter Parker makes a great Spider-Man because when you look at him initially, you don't picture him as being a superhero. Or Bilbo ends up making a great thief and whatnot because he's just like, you don't picture a happy, comfortable hobbit going out into the big wide world and going up against a dragon. So same sort of concept. So getting into character relationships, character interactions is a big part of story for me. If you build real people, there's just so much tension and drama between them. So I want to talk about the three things that I really center in on when creating these character relationships and the things that I'm looking for. So like the points of conflict that I'm looking for. So for instance, when I'm bringing two characters together, whether they're going to be, it's just like a friendship, whether it ends up being a romantic relationship, familial, it could be a working relationship, I always look for the similarities. So what are the things that these characters can bond over? Because that's important. If you just throw two characters together for any reason, they don't have anything in common, there's going to be no chemistry. It's going to fall flat. And that happens a lot with characters who aren't actually fleshed out, which we'll talk about later. But that is a surefire way to know if your characters are flat, is if you have two thrown together in a relationship and they don't have any similarities. It's like, well, then you haven't built the characters enough. You don't know enough about the characters really to put them in a relationship together. So, because everyone has something in common. Pick any two people off the street, there's something these two people can bond over. So similarities, but also differences, points of conflict. So the last thing you want are two characters that are exactly the same or mirrors, because you want them to bond, but you also want conflict. And for instance, I have these two characters that I'm working on now, that are going to end up in like a working type relationship, and they're similar in the sense that they're from the same region. They're in a foreign big city. They are two of few people that are foreign to this big city. They're from a similar region, so they bond over that. There's a kindred spirit type sense. We're from the same region and we're both fish out of water in this big city. However, their tribes are currently and for centuries at war. So it is, when it comes to their day-to-day experiences in this big city, they're both outsiders. They both feel like fish out of water. They're both foreign. So there's a bond in that. And yet there's this overarching conflict because personally, and when it comes to like their family and their background, they're not supposed to get along. So throwing them together in a working relationship, a lot of tension, a lot of conflict. but also there's that, secret kindredship, or, it like almost like a brotherhood type thing where it's, I can relate to you in this way despite the fact that I'm supposed to not like you. So that's the first thing I look for: similarities and differences in these two characters. The second thing, because this always comes second, even though it's part of the ending, it always comes second, but it's the inevitable outcome. So when I'm building the characters, I know who they are at the beginning. I know who they were before the story. I know who they are on page 1 of the story. And then with the similarities and differences, I'm building the middle, but I need to know the end. I need to know where these characters end up when it comes to, their relationship. So are they eventually going to become, are they like an enemies to friends? Or is it like a friends to lovers? Or is it like an anti-hero type story where one betrays the other? Is it family? That's a big one too. So especially in YA, a lot of YA is familial conflict, which I appreciate. And a lot of just like general fiction is family conflict. So it's, at the end of the story, is our main protagonist going to be, forgiving all of the trauma, drama, whatever that's gone on in the family, or are they going to be, separating themselves from their family members? Because there is that extra layer of strife when it comes to dealing with family, because as people say, well, that's still your mom, that's still your dad, that's still yada yada. So it's good to know going into the story at the end, well, is the experience that our main character goes through, is it going to be enough to forgive certain things, or is it going to be the type of situation where the character gets to the end and they're strong enough to finally cut all ties and move on and build their own life? So that's what I look for second. Similarities and differences, and then the inevitable outcome of these relationships. Is there a happy ending? Is it like I said, enemies to friends, friends to lovers, yada yada. And lastly, and this touches on the first point that I made about making sure you're building real characters, is what does character A, so our main protagonist, what do they get out of the relationship? And then on the converse side, or the flip side, what does character A give in the relationship? So typically, no two people go into a relationship expecting everything and giving nothing. Hello. Jesus Christ. So you have character A, main protagonist. They are going to go into the relationship seeking something from character B, but they also need to give something to character B. So this is a common critique of Twilight, for instance, is you have, main character's love interest who is strong, powerful, old, all these things, educated, has seen the world, whatever. And then you have Bella, who is a wet paper bag and brings nothing to the relationship, which is why it's so unbelievable. And that's what we're going for, is believability. So if you have character B basically there to, help character A, to be a light, to be all of these things, and then your main protagonist is just an empty shell of a person that brings nothing, then realistically there would be no part of the relationship or no reason that character B would stay or that character B would help or what have you. So not only do you need to make sure that you are creating real people, touching on the similarities and differences that we talked about earlier, but making sure that if you have two characters in a relationship, whether it's a friendship, working relationship, familial relationship, whatever, each character is giving something and each character is getting something they need out of it. This is classic in like a detective type story where you have like the sleuth investigative journalist and the detective. Perhaps they don't get along very well, but both character A and character B have either information or expertise or experience that they're bringing to this investigation, and despite perhaps not getting along on a personal level, they are forced to work together on a professional level. And that touches again on the conflict of, maybe they don't get along, so there's tension, there's conflict, but there's their bonding and their similarities between them when it comes to, trying to solve this crime. So those are the three things: similarities and differences, the inevitable outcome of the relationship, what's that end of the arc going to look like, and then what do both people bring to the relationship. And that's another great point of possible tension and conflict. What are both characters bringing to the relationship? Because it could be one of those situations where the characters start out, like I had a relationship like this in one of my stories, where the characters start out as enemies, but there is a kidnapping in their town, and character A's sister basically goes missing, and then character B has some information that she needs, and despite them being enemies, they end up basically having to work together for separate reasons, and then that ends up turning the relationship into a friendship, which the evolution of relationships, and then that end arc, what's the inevitable outcome. I knew the inevitable outcome of that relationship was that I wanted them to become friends. So they all play together, they all intermingle. You don't have to create one first or what have you. It's just those three things in tandem. That is the best way to get your character relationships nailed down. And I don't know if it's the same for you guys out there, but for me, that's when I start getting excited and passionate and all of that for drafting. Is I'm imagining the characters, they've come to life in my head, they're in scenes together, they're exchanging dialogue, yada yada. So if it's the same for you, let me know in the comments below. As always, if you have questions, you can comment, tweet me at Camille A. Singer. I know I've been missing, but we're back to craft videos. So if you have video topic requests, you can tweet me or comment those as well. I will see you all next time, but for now, you should be writing stuff.